you're welcome back to my channel. It's a beautiful new week, so we're going straight to what we have today. Chapter 3. You want to know what discipline is not? I still remain your host, Amarachi Eze. So before I start today's review, I'll take us back on a memory lane with these questions. How did you feel when flogged with canes or hit with other objects when you were a child? If you're watching this video right now, just put the comment how you felt on the comment section. So I could hear you say things like, I felt humiliated and hated. I was shut down, not to air my fear. It was a bad experience that created fear in me. I got beaten, spanked for things I didn't do, simply because I'm the eldest. So many people are in this shoe, because they are eldest, they will get spanked for what they did not do. It created resentment in me. I got used to the flogging and beating, so whenever it comes up, I just take it. My other siblings would lie against me because they know that my parents won't ask. They would just pounce on me. I felt alone and unloved. And at a time, I stopped caring. Later, I became aggressive and defensive. Some of us still remember the scars we sustained as a result of the beatings. These and many more were some answers parents gave in the book, and I believe it could be seen with you. So put down how you felt when you were flogged. Put it in the comment section. Then another question for you. Did the flogging and beatings stop the misbehaviors parents were trying to achieve them? You can think about that. Did it really stop the misbehavior? Or even if you may think it stopped at that particular moment, you still continued it, became hypocritical. Once dad and mom are not around, you behave as you want. Also, most times you can reason that the Bible says, spare the rod and spoil the child. But the Bible never says so. That's just a popular saying. Looking at what the Bible says similar to that is in Proverbs chapter 13 verse 24. It says, he who spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is diligent to discipline him. So the question is, does the rod mean cane or punishment as a way of discipline? Does it? Let's see cases where the rod was used in the Bible. We saw the case of Moses using the rod to bring the children of Israel from Egypt through the wilderness to the promised land. The rod he used was for guidance and not for hitting. Also in the Bible, in Proverbs 22:15, it says, foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. Rod of correction, not rod of punishment. Correction aims at stopping and correcting the behavior, but punishment aims at inflicting pain and hoping that the child will change. In the culture of the Israelites, the rod was a natural symbol of authority, as the tool used by the shepherd to correct and guide his flock. We'll be using a lot of scriptures today. This is to buttress our point about the issue of discipline and punishment, so that we can be convinced to change this harmful narrative of what discipline is not and stop damaging our children, all in the name of discipline. If Ephesians 6:4 wants fathers not to incite anger in their children, but rather encourage them through corrective instructions, which points them to the Lord. As parents, we entertain this fear a lot, that when we don't flog our children, they will spoil. No, this is not true. The truth is that we don't know any other disciplinary strategy to use apart from flogging. If you don't flog your child, but you use other effective disciplinary strategy, your child will turn out fine and more equipped to face his or her world. Also, we used to think that Nigerian kids raised with corporal punishment were better than Western kids. This is not also true. The fear of flogging and other punishment from childhood has a strong effect on self-confidence and boldness. Also, we think we're morally better than the Western kids, but it is fear of being punished that suppresses what is in us. I told a story in one of my reviews. A child was asked to sit down by force. So the child said, "Even though I am sitting down, but in my mind I am standing up." So we force children to suppress that behavior they want to exhibit. So we'll say, okay, this is the true color of this child, and we'll know how to train that misbehavior. But what we do through fear-based control, suppress them from doing that. And anytime they will react, it will become an outburst. So suppression is not good for the human brain. You need to know that we cannot flog bad habits out of your children. We can suppress it with flogging, but it will manifest in some other ways later. That is why you see hypocrisy everywhere. You see people lying just because you have suppressed the emotions, those misbehavior they would have brought out for you to train through the appropriate discipline. So, when you suppress behavior, it will manifest in other ways. Children thrive better in an environment of love. So the need for us to connect before we correct, it's important. If you have not watched my review on the book Connect to Correct, please subscribe to my channel so that you can easily access those videos. Okay, let's see, in the area of creativity, are we better than the Oyibos? We're not better than the Oyibo kids. As we all know, it is these Oyibos who produce the technology, like this Facebook we're using, the Twitter, YouTube, that we all use and benefit from. It was the creativity that's all brought about it. It's not that we don't have that reasoning, but the parenting strategy, the disciplinary strategy that was used for us, suppressed it right from childhood. So, I think this is a good conversation for us to have as Nigerians and reevaluate the upbringing and training method we're using for our children. Whenever you're creating a strategy for the discipline that works, you must remember what discipline is not. Using the cane is a quick fix. People defend the beating of children because they don't know any other disciplinary strategy to use. Also, they have refused to work on their emotions. They are not patient and committed enough to learn and use other strategies that will get better and lasting results. Would you like to work on your emotions? We have an emotional intelligence course that will help you, pull you through on how to work on your emotions so that you can be better available for your children. Most people who use the cane are just not ready to seek alternatives that take a longer time to implement, because using those other methods takes a lot of work. So the cane gives you that quick fix you require. Hitting a child may stop a problem behavior from the child, especially in your presence, but might not really correct the behavior. Many times we flog a child and allowed that flogging to take over the teaching of what the child should have learned in place of that flogging. In fact, we substitute beating for teaching consequences of actions, which should teach a child that every decision he makes has a consequence. For example, some time ago when my children were 7, 5, and 3, when they come back from school, then I had no one to stay with them, just stay all alone. So the youngest would play and pour water all over the house. When I came back that day, I asked the eldest brother why he did not stop his younger brother from pouring water all inside the room. After yelling, I shouted at them, why would they do? They should not do it the next time. Do you know, the next day, they did the same thing. When I came back, I remember the teaching I got. So I refused to yell. I told them to bring mop and clean up. Tried to clean. And at a time, it became difficult for them. So they started pleading, beckoning on me to come and help them. But I refused to help. They tried to do it and it was difficult. Then at last, I finally decided to help them. The following day, the same thing happened again. Get some poured water again. Then I repeated the same consequence. But this time around, I refused to help them. I made sure they cleaned it. And you know, of course, that children, they could not clean it well, but at least they did something tangible. Since after that day, that misbehavior stopped. You see, it took me almost 4 days for them to assimilate that for every action there is a consequence. And even in the consequence that melted, they acquired how to mop. But in most cases, what we do is that we flog them, we yell. And by flogging or yelling, we damage our relationship with them. And yet, they have not learned anything through that process. But we have only succeeded in impacting fear, the fear of Cain. And this will make them not to try out new things. So to achieve real correction, you need to use the discipline that works. This discipline that works, it's supportive, it's empowering, and it will bring an understanding of why the act that child did, it's wrong. And it will also guide the child to develop desirable behavioral outcomes that are enduring, whether you are there or not. So, my children knows that anytime they pour water, they must clean it. Even if they do that by mistake, they will clean it. If they do it on purpose, they know that that's a responsibility they must carry out. So you see, this discipline worked for them. But the first time I yelled, I shouted, they didn't get it. At that point where I was shouting, their brain shuts down. They can't learn anything. You see, it's impacting the emotional brain, which makes them not to think with their human brain. According to Praise for Wewin, in one of his articles, there are 7 things you must consider before beating your child. If you have considered these 7 things and none of them work, then you're permitted to use your own method. So never beat a child for what you have not taught him. If you have not taught your child what to do in such misbehavior, you should not beat the child. Then never beat a child without giving him enough time to assimilate what you have taught him. Next, never beat a child when there is another way to effectively correct that behavior. Never beat a child when there is no data to guarantee that beating will correct that behavior. Never beat a child when you're angry because you may damage the child. We have seen some parents who has damaged their children. I mean physical damage. There are instances you see a child whose eyes is blinded, who has scars on the body. That is the result of beating. And you think that beating is discipline. No, it's not. Never beat a child without agreeing with him prior to the offense, the punitive measures for such. That you let the child understand the consequence that will be melted on him if he misbehaves. Let him understand that consequence. Never beat a child without giving him the chance to defend himself and explain the reason behind the misbehavior. Yes, we may see it as a misbehavior, but that child is learning. It could be that he's thinking something in his brain. My son will always say, my brain told me to do this. So children learn with anything, anytime, at all times. So never beat them if you have not asked them the reason why they did that behavior. So once you run these checks and you still feel the need to go ahead, then deploy your rod of correction. But please note that the fact that your parents beat you doesn't necessarily mean that their rod of correction helped you overcome the behavior. The questions you should ask are, what is the opportunity cost of their flogging? Did it make you to become more confident in your ability? Did it improve your performance and curiosity, or it introduced fear into your life? Did you become a better person as a result of their flogging? What exactly is your present adult report card saying compared to your peers in other nations that did not apply flogging? Have you become disciplined or domesticated? Most of us have become domesticated and not disciplined. Think on all these questions. Friends, I'm not against yelling or flogging, but one critical thing I noticed is that many of us have not mastered the art of effective communication and behavioral change. So we deploy flogging while hoping it will correct the behavior. Teachers and caregivers are also inclusive in this. What if you can master a better way of correcting your child that doesn't destroy the child? Will you apply it? If you actually need to discover it, please check the description below. Join the Intentional Parent Academy. The next cohort, the next section is starting 1st December 2023. You will have a change in your parenting journey. Whenever you hear the likes of Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and several other folks transforming our world, let that instruct you on what is possible when the innocence and the curiosity of a child is preserved through effective communication. I told us earlier that children come to this world with curiosity. They want to exploit. But most times, this parenting strategy we use suppresses this curiosity and turn it off, that they are not able to reason, but they act on fear just to please us. Criminals don't change by beating. They change through behavioral change intervention. And thankfully, your child is not a criminal. So why beat him in the first place? Your greatest win as a parent is raising a child who will do the right thing even when you are not physically present. I know that's the prayer of every parent. If you're still hitting your child, it bothers so much on your inability to control your emotions. In Connect to Correct book review series, chapter 4, the author shared strategies on how to work on your emotions. If you have not watched that video, subscribe to my channel so you will gain easy access to those reviews. The truth is, without working on your emotions, you will not achieve so much using the discipline that works. So if you have not worked on your emotions, you cannot achieve so much using this discipline strategies that's been talked about in this book. Because children will continue to be children. They will act as children. And most of these, their actions will cause you to react emotionally. But if you're able to walk through your emotions, then you will be able to apply this discipline that works. So you can also go through the emotional intelligence course. Check the description. Find how to go through that course. So let's see what discipline is not. First, we need to know that discipline is not forced obedience. The mistake many parents make is thinking that they can use forced obedience to achieve their aims. Unfortunately, it never works, because as soon as you are out of sight, the children will flaunt that rule. What should you do instead of forced obedience? You should teach your child delayed gratification. For instance, the author speaking now, my children on their own understood that watching television during the weekdays when school is in section will obstruct a lot of what they need to do. This is not because I told them not to. Instead, we both analyzed why they should not watch television. We taught them how to delay gratification and allow them to exploit themselves. And they found out it will make them lose track of time, hence failing to do other important things. They were part of the process. They understood that the rule is not an attempt to control them, but because it is what is required for their own good per time. So what should you do instead of forced obedience? You should allow them to engage and exploit other outdoor play. Children learn a lot through play. But what we do most times, you lock your child inside. You don't want your child to come out and dating himself. You don't want your child to interact with others. That is what helps their brain. That is what helps them learn. That is what makes them think. So we should allow them. They should go through a lot of play. You can also structure play for them. Then teach them to do what is right per time and not forced obedience. Teach them what to do and not forcing them. Do this. No. Now let them know why that rule is in place at the said moment. That's if the rule of not watching television. You should note that any victory gotten by force doesn't last. Okay, number 2 of what discipline is not is that discipline is not yelling. Yelling at your child is pouring out your frustrations on the child. It actually doesn't teach your child to behave better. Instead, it models yelling to your children. Before you know it, you see your child also yelling at his siblings. It also models lack of control and anger, especially. So let's see this scenario. Imagine 2 of your children arguing on a subject matter, and it's gone on for some time, maybe about 5 minutes. You get enough of the argument and then you yell. If you both don't keep quiet, you will be in for my trouble. The interesting thing about yelling is that, just like hitting a child, it will make them keep quiet and conform for a while. And yes, at this point, it gives you some moment of relief, thinking your yelling has worked. Unfortunately, what we never understand is that yelling has no long-term positive effect on misbehavior. Remember that the goal of discipline is to bring about that long-term effect of change in that misbehavior. So, but yelling doesn't give us this long-term effect. It will just give you that moment of rest. Then the cycle continues again. The children disagree and argue again. You yell, they keep quiet. After a while, they continue. You yell again and they keep quiet. This cycle continues, and sometimes it upsets you and you carry out your threats. This unfortunately teaches your child that it's okay to argue, provided you haven't yelled or punished them yet. It doesn't teach them problem-solving skills. So yes, your yelling can work, but only for a while. But if you are able to teach them, okay, anytime you encounter a challenge, you teach them problem-solving skills. These are the steps you need to take in order to resolve that. You see that in the long run, they get this problem-solving skill. And whenever they find themselves in an argument, they put up that skill. And you see that behavior, that misbehavior is solved. I used to be a yeller myself, but at a point in my life, I knew that my children would copy that. I became intentional and I worked on my emotions. Would you also like to go through the same process? Use the link in the description to take the emotional intelligence course. Also, you need to know that you don't yell because children upset you. You yell because you can't control your emotions. The truth is, emotional control is a skill. It is not a wish. Until you learn this emotional control skill, nothing will change. You will say, okay, let me try. If you have not learned that skill, say, let me try not to yell today. But before you know it, when children behave like children, it triggers that emotion and you shout. But when you learn the skill of not learning, then it becomes part of you. So yelling makes children more aggressive, physically and verbally. Yelling in general, no matter what the context, is an expression of anger in the wrong way. It scares children and makes them feel insecure. If you want to raise a child with strength and coping mechanisms, use a firm, calm, and compassionate tone. So your voice must be firm, but calm and compassionate. This allows the child's brain to remain open and learn. Another point, what discipline is not, is that discipline is not being permissive. Most times when you hear people say don't flog your child, you think that is you permit your child to behave anyhow. No, discipline is not being permissive. It's an abuse to your child to do nothing when they err. You must learn to find solution to your child's misbehavior. Don't do nothing. One of the greatest mistakes we make we decide to raise children with positive discipline is that we tend to become permissive because we lack the right tools to use. I always tell parents that you can't evolve from control to connection parenting without knowing the right tools to use. So, if you followed through our Connect to Correct series without learning the discipline that works, you will become a permissive parent. You will connect with your children, but you don't know the skills to use to discipline them. Then you will become a permissive parent. When you rescue your child at all times and protect them from disappointments, you are not being kind. You are being permissive, which is harmful to them in the long run. Remember, children develop their problem-solving skills and coping mechanism via experiences. What tools do you require to parent via connection? So these are the tools you require to parent via connection. Be kind but firm. Work on your emotions and take charge. Teach, don't force. So you have to devote time for training these children. Validate feelings, don't rescue or protect them. How do you validate their feelings? You can say something like, I know you feel frustrated, but you need to face the consequences of your actions. Remember, for every action, there is a consequence. That's how you validate their feeling, and they will understand it and agree to go through that consequence. Then use curiosity questions instead of always commanding. Example of using curiosity question. Would you like to do the laundry now or after you are done playing for about 5 minutes? So these are the tools you can use. Discipline via connection. You see, in all those tools, you see there is connection in it and not force. Another thing discipline is that discipline is not verbal abuse. You see a parent chanting, you are always careless. You just never understand anything I teach you. You just don't listen. You can't see anything wrong. You are stupid. You are just dumb. Is that familiar? This is the everyday line of many parents. When their children make mistakes, all I hear is condemnation and not correction. We actually end up teaching our children that mistakes are not part of being human. Please, if you have not watched the video on mistakes and failures are tools in parenting, subscribe to our channel so that you can have easy access to that video. Instead of using the verbal abuses we use most of the time, you would say something like this. You can actually hold that cup in an upright position. That way it won't slip. If you listen carefully, you will understand me. I think you were distracted while I was talking. That's why you wouldn't understand my instructions. Another way you can say is, I would like you to always be more observant while doing things. Because I know if you were, you would have seen this. I believe this sounds better. Connect to correct. Don't condemn to correct. Your condemnation destroys your child's self-esteem. It doesn't correct the behavior. It only destroys the child's self-esteem. When you condemn to correct, you lose your child. What exactly are you saying to your child? Know that words cast spells. Words will hurt your child. Abuse must not be physical before it is called abuse. People have committed suicide because of what they were told. Parents, work on you. Work on yourself. Becoming an emotionally intelligent parent is very key for us as caregivers because it gives us the ability to ensure that we speak the right words at all times. Not be driven by our emotions. If you still speak venom when you're upset, trust me, it's because you can't control your emotions and put them in check. You need a class on emotional intelligence. Find the link in the description for that course. It will change your life. It will change the words you speak to your children. The next thing discipline is that discipline is not a reward system. Rewards don't really correct misbehavior. They only change the why and the way children accomplish their task. If you rely on rewards, you will keep rewarding for him to do that. So you see, it's changing the reason, the why, and the way children accomplish the task. It doesn't really help this child to think through the process. It doesn't help the child to learn through that process. And at the end, the misbehavior is not changed. That means if there is no reward for that, the child will continue the misbehavior. So if you rely on rewards to teach your children how they should behave, you will deny them the opportunity to act from an inner source of motivation and strength. So discipline is not a reward system. Next, discipline is not assumption or accusation trial. Assumptions are our intuition trying to help us to make sense of situations. If you jump to conclusions too soon, your assumptions may leave your child feeling hurt, angry, and defensive, when really what your child needs from you at the set time is support, time, and space to work things out on his own. As you attempt to discipline effectively, you must do so with facts, or else you will breed resentment in the child or even make the child rebel. To buttress this point, I will use the story shared in this book. This is a true life story that someone shared in the book. Said, I was 14 years old at that time. My dad just came back from London with PG top tea of different flavors. I took some to school to share with my friends. The next day, my classmates brought a lemon flavored tea to share. I liked the aroma. I did not know that a girl in my class went to my mom to tell her that I was doing abortion with lemon in school. My mom reported to my dad. Poor me. I did not know what abortion was at that time. My dad beat me black blue. I overheard him telling my mom that he would want to smash my head on the wall and then dump me in the hospital. Could you imagine that? He even brought a machete and told me to stretch my hands. I used to have and still have painful menses. They assumed that it's because of men I met then. Before God and man, I was totally innocent. Did not even understand what I was accused of. I developed intense hatred in my heart. I attempted suicide on 3 occasions in school. This is a real life story. So you see the damaging effects our discipline can cause. As parents, let's be careful how we use assumptions and accusations as tool for discipline. If this parent had connection with the said child, this wouldn't have happened. Even though the child was accused, a parent who has connection with the child will be able to extract this information from the child. So let's be careful with the type of discipline we use. Then lastly, we should know that discipline is not shaming a child. When you shame a child as a tool for discipline, you lose connection and communication. And when there is no connection, true and lasting correction can never be achieved. So, as you have seen what discipline is not, I believe you will also want to learn what discipline is. So, join us in our next review. It promises to be great. We're going to be discussing what kind of discipline works. And chapter 5, then we'll get those tools on how to discipline right. So follow us through this review. You will arm yourself with the right tools to replace with yelling and flogging. We have come to the end of today's review. I know you picked something, so I'm grateful. I want to say thank you for watching today's review. I do not take your time for granted. I love you, I honor you. All we're yearning for is for a better Nigeria. And this better Nigeria will come through us. It will come through the parenting strategy we will use to build and mold these children for the future. Lastly, if you have not subscribed to my channel, what are you waiting for? I believe you will not want to miss out in our next review. So subscribe now so that you'll be notified when the next video drop. See you in our next review. I love you. I honor you. Thank you for the opportunity.